Good morning and welcome back, everybody, on a conversation on artificial intelligence. Paolo, your host, and today we have a very interesting person that we invited, and we're talking with Esfandiar Bandari, who is the CEO and founder of Texnomics. So today, the reason why this is a very interesting video is because we're gonna look into an industry that affects everybody, and that's the recruiting industry. So how is recruiting gonna be modified by artificial intelligence? How you will have to cheat machines to get your candidacy through the various steps of interviews? That's something we don't know. We know that it's gonna change. So stay tuned and let's welcome Esfandiar. Esfandiar, how are you today?
I'm fine, my friend Paolo. How are you doing? Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's our pleasure and honor to have you here. So, Esfandiar, to start with, we want to learn a little bit about yourself. Here is a little question that I have you to ask. Suppose we take, I know you've been at NASA, and suppose we take a missile that can travel in the past, and we parachute you 30 years ago, and you have to tell your friends of that time what happened in your career. What would you tell them? How would you explain what you've been doing?
Oh, interesting question. Well, I think my friends from 30 years ago, I just tell them that, I stayed a geek. And my friends back then were also geeks, so there are no surprises there. I would say that I have had a very lucky career being able to hang around really intelligent people, work at NASA, work at Texnomics, go to some great schools, Berkeley, Stanford, CMU, and Cambridge, and that it's been all fun.
Okay, so very good. How you can hear, Esfandiar has worked at very prestigious research institutions. So there was one thing I wanted really to zoom. You have worked at NASA for a number of years, and typically people that reach positions like that, they enjoy it. It's kind of difficult to get there and go through all the competition, so they don't typically leave. Can you tell us about how you develop interest towards entrepreneurship and what led you to leave and what happened after that you left?
Great question, actually. So I loved NASA and I loved working there. A lot of people left with me. Part of the reason was that we were going through a transition at NASA when it came down to the budgets. So that kind of, when I saw a lot of people leaving, that was kind of an incentive for me to find a new career path, even though I really loved NASA. And the second reason was that, I looked at, and I think this happened to my colleagues too, I looked at the people who were above me and where that I would replace, and they were going to be there for a long time, right? So you kind of get to a place in your career where you say, okay, I can stay here, do fun things, have issues with the funding, or I can go and find new paths and apply what I've learned to new industries. And that's basically what I did. There was a third thing, I should tell you. There was a third thing. I got a really good offer from Cambridge to go do an MBA there. And I always wanted to do an MBA. So that was the third factor that made me leave NASA, go do my MBA at the University of Cambridge in the UK.
So what did you do immediately after, like when you did your MBA? So, and then what happened after the MBA? What did you do before Texnomics?
One of the biggest decisions, in fact, that I had to really make is go into business or go into technology. So I went into business. I started working with a bunch of VCs in England, investors and investing firms who had really interesting model of technology transfer from universities to companies. I also worked with a VC firm and an angel group here in the Valley, and then I decided to do my own company.
So very good. So, by the way, something that is similar to my path, not exactly congruent, but I also, I left academia and then I ended up in VC for a little bit. I did my MBA. And before, let's say, going into the entrepreneur path and the product path, I stepped a little bit into the venture capital world. But so let's really take a look now to your baby Texnomics. So where does the name come from?
Well, I looked for a name all over the place. The original name I really liked was textuality, but Texnomics is actually really makes sense because text is text, of course, right? Which is written or spoken word, and nomics means rules and norms. And what basically we do is that we apply natural language processing, its rules and norms, to analyzing text data. So it perfectly captured what we were doing.
Okay. So how is recruiting broken today? Like, what is the problem the problem or the problems that you saw in the recruiting industry that made you starting Texnomics?
That is a fantastic question, right? Why recruiting and why not something else? I have to tell you, if I knew how much problems recruiting has, I might have thought differently about trying to solve it. The issue with recruiting really is, some people call it, the second most inefficient industry after construction. I think the issue with the issue with recruiting, there are many, but they're all fun. For instance, one of them is the issue of temporality, right? Somebody is looking for a job, but the perfect job is not open. They go find a job, and now the perfect job opens for them. There are other issues, for instance, massive amount of data. Who are you going to hire when there are, hundreds of thousands of applicants, and how are you going to reach them? How are you going to find them, right? How are you going to interview them? How are you going to? And the biggest problem is really being inundated with a massive amount of data, which can work for technologies like machine learning, but it would make it particularly difficult for people who are looking to find the right candidate. And so recruiting is basically trying to optimize a function in the presence of tremendous amount of ambiguity, where you really don't see the function completely, but you only see bits and pieces of it, right? And when and it has multiple components. One of them is, can the person do the job? And the second piece really is, are they a fit for the company? Are they a cultural fit for the company?
So I'd like to dig a little bit more into this. If you look at this problem of too much information, and
Right.
today recruiters basically what they do is they scan quickly resumes and look for either keywords or companies. Like, for example, if you work at Google, maybe you want to hire somebody from Amazon or Facebook and vice versa. And then
Right.
they kind of don't look at anybody else. So that's the way that things typically proceed. How are you solving that? Or, is your software solving this type of problem?
Yes. So I'll give you some statistics. Majority of resumes don't get read. They just don't. People apply to jobs, and even Wall Street Journal and Forbes have written about it. And it goes into what Wall Street calls a black hole. So one of the things that we do is that we look at all the resumes. Okay, recruiters are really inundated. They only read about 20% of the resumes, and we read the 100% of it, and we help them figure out what is it that they should be looking for, but more importantly, who is the best candidate given what they're looking for. So that's I would consider that that's one of the biggest things that we do. The second thing that we do is that we try to bring a harmony between the teams in terms of what is it that what is it that they want in the candidates, right? Because even hiring managers, speaking as a hiring manager, I'm sure you have been there too, Paolo, a lot of times we really don't know what we want, right? So one of the things that we do is that by looking at the resumes, by looking at the job posting, by getting the interaction between the recruiter and the hiring manager going, we figure out, we narrow down on what is the most important characteristics, at least on the technical level, not on the personality level, but on the technical level of what is it that is the most important characteristics of the candidate. And that alone, those two things, reading all the resumes and trying to narrow down what is it that you're looking for, solves a huge amount of the ambiguity going forward.
So I would like to now separate these two different benefits and look into them a little bit in more details. So if we look at the first benefit, is basically nobody reads, or they read the very limited amount of resumes that are received. So instead, your technology is going to read all of them. Fine.
Right.
But question number one for this is, once he reads, what is able to tell to the recruiter, what the insight is going to give to the recruiter, and now it's going to give that insight that the recruiter did not have before. And two, why is the recruiter going to listen to what the computer is saying? Why is not the recruiter going back into his or her previous mode of just looking at 2 or 3 keywords and get the things done quickly?
That's a great, okay. You asked all the right questions, Paolo, and they're hard questions to answer. So one of the things that we do, we allow the recruiter and the hiring manager, right, to just go wild, put in everything that you want. And we do analytics in the background, and we tell you that, look, of all the things that you wanted, okay, these are the things that people can offer, okay? This is the distribution of the things that you want. And what you're saying is really important, Paolo, because the way that it happens today and the reason that it takes so long to hire someone is because, recruiters just go 2-3 keywords searches and then they're the wrong keyword searches, and then they have to go back to the hiring manager, and the hiring manager says, no, I don't want this, I want these. And the hiring manager doesn't know what they want. So again, removing these ambiguities really, really helps. The other things that it does for the recruiter is one of the beauties of artificial intelligence is that when you look at the results, right, and you can use it as a template to learn what you were doing wrong, right? So one of the biggest problems right now in recruiting is that the recruiters look for the wrong things. They don't know what to look for, right? But if artificial intelligence, A, can help you decide what better things to look for, and secondly, even if you look for the wrong things, right, you can look at the results from artificial intelligence and say, oh, okay, this is not what I want, but now that I've seen the result, I know how I can improve it. Just like Google search, right? You do one search, you see that the result isn't perfect, but hey, by looking at the results, now you get an idea of how to do it again. So, and that is one of the things that our system does. It basically teaches you and trains you to become a better recruiter.
So what comes to my mind, so we're looking at and digging in the benefits. I have been called by several recruiters, and I can tell right out of the gate when you're going to be called by somebody who is at the beginning of his career or is a generalist, somebody who is ahead in his career but doesn't understand the technology, and somebody who instead, there are a few, are ahead in their career and they understand the technology. So the problem for these 3 type of people is completely different. The first type of person is basically trying to do everything, and doesn't understand the technology, doesn't fully understand the role. So the second person, the problem is more, he has the experience in hiring people, so he knows all the human element of it. If this person can fit with the hiring manager, where this person is in his career, he is going to find this job interesting or not, but he doesn't know that particular technical field. So, and you can tell. The third person is very advanced. Usually, they kind of use LinkedIn and they're able to do almost everything through LinkedIn. So how does your software respond to these 3 type of potential, recruiters?
Great question, Paolo. So at the end of the day, right, the person that does the hiring is the hiring manager. It really isn't a recruiter, right? The recruiter basically has to do a mind read on the hiring manager and figure out what is it that the hiring manager is looking for. So one of the things that we do is that we make it really seamless between the two to interact, okay, and to collaborate. The other thing is that going back to what I said earlier, because our results are very, very animated, right, and we give you the full scope of what is there and what you should be looking for, right, through iteration, they get better. Now, to answer a little bit about the 3 types of recruiters that you mentioned, if a recruiter refuses to use, and I've had those, believe it or not, refuses to use technology, we're in trouble, okay? Because sitting there and reading resumes by hand, and a lot of people do that, right, is you're gonna miss a lot. In fact, there is a study that shows people who do manual screening of resumes have a 2 to 12% chance of finding the best candidate, right? So as far as the recruiters that are both computer savvy and have a lot of experience, those are the best types that you want. And those and what our software does, it frees you to look at the human elements rather than the technical elements, right? It frees you from figuring out what is in the resume, but rather, is this person a match for the job? Is it a match for the team? Is it a match for the hiring manager? Is it a match for the task that they're going to be doing? And that is something that people often ask me, right? They say, okay, we're looking at your system, you knocked out the qualifications for it. What about the human element? What about the cultural fit? That is something that a recruiter has, the third type of recruiter that you mentioned is, I can't see a replacement for them, right? A recruiter that can really talk to the candidate and determine, their enthusiasm, their basically their personality and their personality fit into the particular company and into the particular position.
So in the end, what we're getting here is that what you're creating an assistant for the recruiter and also something that facilitates the relationship between the recruiter and the hiring manager. So it's not necessarily, if you like, taking away the job from the recruiter, but it's making it, in a way, simpler. Now, what it comes to my mind is what will happen to the people, to the candidates? Like, what would be the likely impact of a technology like this on the candidates? Is there a risk that you become kind of a standard, like Facebook, for example? One of the criticisms that are made about Facebook in selecting news and the algorithm that Facebook uses to serve content to people is that now they become kind of a, quote unquote, the judge of the ideas in the world, because they choose which ones are going to be propagated to whom. And so in a way, your algorithm will kind of score candidates and it will choose the set that the human being can take a look at. So what will happen to the candidates? Do you think, how things will evolve?
Again, a really good question, because look, AI, like many things, have a positive side and has a negative side to it, right? And this is important. This is important to realize. So, for instance, one of the things that our software will do is that it will take the overqualified candidate because they can do the job, right, and push them to the top, right? And this is where the recruiter, a good recruiter, has to come in, has to look at the qualifications and say, you're really overqualified. This job is not going to challenge you. Are you okay with that, right? The other candidates that would be affected are candidates that apply everywhere. Nurses that are applying to engineering that are applying to nurses. They're basically doing a gunshot, and I've seen that too, right? And those guys are already taking a chance. They're hoping against all hope to find a job. So they apply everywhere and hope that somebody will make a mistake and hire them for a job they're not qualified for, right? So they get eliminated also very, very quickly, but they shouldn't be applying to the job in the first place. So the question is, what becomes to the candidates in the middle, right? What becomes of the candidate who are qualified but are on the fringes, right? They're not exactly have all the qualifications, or they don't have some of the most important qualifications, right? And that is, or even more importantly, Paolo, people who have related experience, but they're trying to switch jobs over, right? AI would not be very good in determining those candidates, okay? Just like right now, I don't know of any technology, really. In fact, there's a really great video from New Yorker about machines trying to figure out your personality, right? And where they fail. So the candidates in the middle, the candidates that are kind of qualified but not exactly, right? They would be affected for particular jobs. But what it does do is that once they find the right jobs, a job that would challenge them, a job that they have the most important qualifications, right? It will help them nail that job. And the other thing that it does, the most positive thing that it does, it eliminates error. That's the most important thing. There is really scary statistics of candidates that went into a job, thought that this was the right job for them, and then they found out that the qualifications that they had didn't match, or the requirements didn't match what they were doing before, and as a result, they had to switch jobs and leave within the first 12 to 18 months. Okay, so those candidates, the mismatched candidates, those numbers will drop, and that will help both the candidate and the company.
That could be value added, but how do you make sure that number, let's say, of dissatisfied candidates, or if you like, bad matches, how do you make sure that the bad matches will actually diminish? Because there is still, at the end of the day, there is still a decision is made by the hiring managers and his colleagues. Usually it's not a single person decision. In many cases, it's kind of 4 or 5 people decision. And your software is influencing the top of the funnel, but not that decision in the end.
So it actually helps both, right? It helps the decision and the funnel. So here's the question. Why people end up, leaving a job or losing their job? There are 2 reasons for it, right? It's either because there's no cultural fit, or the personality doesn't match the personality of the team. We don't do anything on that. We can't do anything on that. And it's really, it has been come to question that all these personality test software, do they help or not? I believe they do help to some extent, okay? The second issue is candidates that take a job and they're just not a fit. They're not a technical fit. And by technical, I don't mean, technology fit, but their skills don't match what is required, right? That's the part that we solve. That's the ambiguity that we remove. One of the biggest ambiguities, one of the biggest issues with getting, not meeting the job, is that the candidates, their skills doesn't exactly match, what is required. It's either because it wasn't stated properly, or because the candidate missed it, right? And the part that we answer is we reduce that ambiguity, we reduce that risk. If, good software like ours, for instance, right, it's just a question of eliminating uncertainty and ambiguity, right? If this candidate has all the skills, if you have found them through hundreds of resumes, and then if you've tested them, right, at least that they can do the job, right? So the only remaining ambiguity that remains is, are there a personality fit? Would you be willing to do the job? Would they fit with the rest of the team, right? So by doing that, by eliminating one of the biggest factors, what happens is that the retention rates increase, the candidate satisfaction increase, because now they're in a job, right, where they're excited. They can do it, they can learn from it, they can do all kinds of other things there. But if you take a candidate that is unqualified professionally and may not be a match on a personality level, that's the worst part of everything. So we are eliminating the ambiguity against professional match, or the skill match, if you may, or the qualification match.
Okay, see, that definitely makes sense. So for, some of our viewers are a little bit more on the technical side, and what I would like to do is really a short trip into the technology here. And basically, you're saying that your technology is able to analyze many, many more resumes, pop up the right candidates. In a way, this is something that has been out there. If we just describe it this way, it has been out there even before with expert systems and so on. So could you maybe identify really where is the difference between what can be done today with your technology and what was done before with the expert systems that were based on keywords and things like that?
Great question. So basically what our artificial intelligence bring into bear are 3 different things, right? So there are three things that we do. One is natural language processing, right? Keyword search doesn't really give you natural language processing. It doesn't look at the meaning. It doesn't look at the grammatical variations. It doesn't look at related skills. It doesn't look at related qualifications. So we bring that to the table, and that's is massive. In fact, just knowing that go to market and gone to market is the same makes a huge difference, right? So that's one of the things that we do. The second thing is learning, right? Machine learning. And that's different from natural language processing. Machine learning teaches the computer to tailor its answers, tailor its results to you and to other people, right? So if everybody's asking about Node.js, okay, and Node.js has certain implications with it, and I'm sorry, I'm going technical here now. This is or take a programming language like Java, right? The key here is that machine learning will tailor the search to you, right, and what is out there. So that's the second thing. And third thing is massive data that you can learn from, right? Whether it is data that you have or whether it's data that the machine brings from outside, right? So for instance, we just talked about Node.js and Java. One of the things that we do is that we not only tell you, hey, this is what you're looking for, we also look at what other people have been looking for, and we tailor our answers to you based on what other people have been looking for. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yes, but in what form you look at other people? So I mean, this software is working on the cloud and
Right.
it's working for a specific company who potentially will give you their resumes, or so how do you connect basically what this specific company or this specific recruiter is doing with what other recruiters in the field are doing? How do you know that information?
Okay, so it's basically like going to Amazon, right? When you go to Amazon and you say, hey, I want to buy, I don't know, a running shoe, right? It says, okay, people who bought running shoes also bought all these other things, right? And it's not you just want a running shoe, but it recommends all these other things to you, right? So that's a form of a machine learning that says, based on the transactions of others, you should really be emphasizing this, or you should really be emphasizing that, or these are the parts that are missing that you're not looking for. And we tell you, hey, you should also be looking at these things. So, and that's really the power of AI. A big part of AI is not just, is solving problems by trying to reduce ambiguity and trying to reduce uncertainty, right? And that's basically what our software does.
So that's very interesting. Now, one of the things that usually happen in machine learning is that people believe it's kind of a magic toolkit that you throw it there and it's going to solve magically all the problems. One of the things come to my mind is, in order to really verify your promise. So one of the things that's going to happen is that people usually believe that machine learning is a black box that solves all the problems. It's kind of a magic box that's going to solve all the problems. Now, in order to fulfill your promise of like finding the right resumes and associating the answer of their system for other recruiters to the current recruiter, smoothing up the relationship between the recruiter and the hiring manager. So it takes time to get there. I assume at the very beginning, not always the algorithms are correct. There are various variations. There are various industries. Within one single industry, there are different seniority levels and different type of positions. So it's a very, there is lots of diversification there in the problem. How do you get to a point that this works for all industries, positions, seniority, technical level?
Great. So upfront and full disclosure, it doesn't. Okay, there are certain industries that you're much better at than other ones, right? Technical, marketing, things like that. And there are certain industries that, frankly, Paolo, there isn't much. Like, for instance, take nursing, right? You either have gone through the programs and you have the certifications, or you don't. Teaching, again, years of experience, certifications, things like that. Some of the government jobs, right? As far as the other industries is concerned, these create a lot of job postings, and we learn from those job postings, right? We looked at what they were looking for. We looked at what people were offering to some extent. We looked at similarities and we look at differences. And that is one part that is important. You said something earlier that also needs emphasis. Look, jobs are like human beings, okay? They vary from position to position to position, right? So this whole idea, this whole notion that I'm going to take a job posting, which by the way is totally incomplete and totally in many ways nebulous, if you may, and I'm going to take a bunch of resumes and I'm going to tell you which one is better, which job is the best for this particular job posting, without getting a human involved that iterates through the selections, will definitely give you a suboptimal result. And that's why we keep the recruiters and we keep the hiring managers in the loop. And you have to do that anyway if you are learning. If you're doing any kind of machine learning, if you're doing any kind of artificial intelligence, right? You learn from the data, yes, but you also need a human being who has his own emotions, as you said earlier, who has his own incentives to come in and say, emphasize this, de-emphasize that. It also changes from role, from position, from company, from all from team to individuals. So those need to be taken into account. Go ahead.
So that's very interesting. Without going into too many of the technical details, I would like to take a look a little bit inside the technology. And we talked about natural language processing, but where is that your company is really innovating? So did you come up with an algorithm that is better than everybody else, or it's a packaging of processes and algorithms that ultimately identify better candidates? And sorry for making this long. What is better in this case? Like, how do you define this algorithm or this process or this software better? Like, how do you measure or define?
Right. Okay, so the best way to quantify something like this is to compare it to human beings, right? So what we do is that we have done this over and over again on different things where we uploaded up to 800 resumes and we said, okay, machine, the recruiter came in, they did their selections, and they basically told the algorithm or the machine what they were looking for. And after the ranking, we had the recruiter go through and say, okay, how good is this ranking, right? And, even with hundreds of resumes, thousands of resumes, every time the recruiter, we basically verified by human being. And we found that it gets better and better and better and better, and that we have had 96% accuracy, right? So that proves to you that the machine is working. The second thing also, Paolo, is like I said, humans get inundated, humans get tired, humans make mistakes. Machines don't. They're consistent almost to a fault, right? So that's the other way that we found that we could do that we have really improved the process.
But is there a possibility, one of the things that it is often discussed on the internet, it's, for example, the case of a chatbot by Microsoft that starts to become racist, because it overfitted and it started to push out racist statements because the deep learning algorithm doesn't really understand what he's saying. It's like the way it has learned is a machine way. And so here in this case, it could happen, you say systematically the software will, repeat the same procedure, but it could also systematically make mistakes because there could be some kind of overfitting or some area where the software is designed to not giving the optimal response. And so really, the question, I think the deepest question that I have is, how do you make sure that you know what type of mistakes it's making and that these are tolerable for the job? For example, what if it's cutting an entire ethnic group? It's an example. Like, how do you make sure the errors that it makes are tolerable and make things not worse than before?
That's a brilliant question, actually. It's really worrisome. It really is. We don't look at names. We don't look at races. We don't look at ethnicities. In fact, we purposefully keep those out, to minimize the problem. As far as overfitting is concerned, or going down the wrong path and ending up selecting only one kind of candidate versus diversifying. What I can tell you there, Paolo, is that the best answer I can give you is because we keep the human in the loop, right? And because we also have a strong personalization and people are different from one another, that should help the algorithm not becoming biased toward one person or one individual or one specific sector and be broader. Now, could overfitting happen? Can we guarantee that bias won't happen? I don't think anybody can. But again, because recruiters are different, because hiring managers are different, because humans are different, right? You pretty much eliminate that possibility. Does that make sense?
It does, definitely. I want to, shift our interest a little bit, looking towards the future here. So we went in HR, we said that my knowledge, and I have the knowledge of being a candidate as everyone else here in the audience. We went from a purely expert system where recruiters were looking for certain keywords, and then even in that case, they get lots of candidates and they screen them quickly with, some, let's say that sometimes with their criteria, which they have either identified over a period of time or sometimes could be just biases, but that's the way that the world worked before. So now we're going towards a world where your machines will be able to do a better job in selecting, because it will interpret and analyze the resumes one by one and kind of select and filter this. So that's kind of the disruptions is happening. But what's next? What do you think is going to happen next in the next 3 to 5 years? What's going to be the next dot in this chain?
So I think that AI and machine learning and big data in general is going to move things up and down the chain, right? So it's not just going to be recruiting now, it's going to be sourcing, finding the right candidate, or writing better job postings, for instance. Or the biggest impact I think that it will have is that because it hires, we end up hiring better candidates, we'll have better retention. But then AI will move into things like employee feedback, where they are in their career, making sure that they get the right level of training, like in performance reviews, well, okay, this candidate is good in this or that. Maybe we should train them in specific points. So it's going to completely not just change the hiring funnel, affect just recruiting and the recruiting funnel, but AI is going to affect the employee performance after they have been hired, right? And that in itself will have tremendous effect on culture, and it will have tremendous effect on the productivity of every company that ends up using AI tools like ours.
So that's definitely, I think, the object separate conversation, because it opens up so many other boxes in a way, because, there's going to be certainly people that's going to be, afraid of the work environment becoming one where machines are watching you all the time. On the other end, there's going to be the issue of whether machines are going to do the right thing. And so there's going to be lots of issues there. But on the other end, there is also the possibility that, machines could reduce some of the current biases in the process of, acquiring and retaining an individual and maybe guiding him through a career. So both things could be possible, actually. And it's going to be some kind of a trial and error. So this is something definitely that affects all of us. It's really how the work relationship at the initiation of you entering into a company, working into a company, is going to be modified in the future. So it's going to affect really massively all of us in getting into a career, moving from one step to the next of the career, and it's going to affect companies definitely. So very interesting conversation. Esfandiar, I wanted to thank you for taking your time. At the same time, wish you all the best with developing your company. And we know that you already have first customers and you've been working on this for a number of years. And very grateful to have had you here.
Thank you for having me, Paolo. It was fun. Great questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Goodbye, everybody.